King Charles found himself in a deeply emotional moment, reportedly moved to tears after facing an unexpected ultimatum from both Prince William and Princess Anne. During a tense family meeting, they pressed him to sever all ties with Camilla's family. The request, shocking in its bluntness, rattled the monarchy and immediately fueled speculation about hidden rifts, questions of loyalty, and the stability of the royal household. Why would William and Anne insist on such a drastic step? The answer, many believe, could alter the crown's future. What should have been a quiet day behind the gilded gates of Buckingham, the palace turned heavy with unease. Whispers filled the air, faces stiffened, and even the chandeliers seemed to hang lower. Into this tense stillness came the ultimatum. William and Anne demanded that Camilla's family be removed from the royal circle. Their words cut through the calm like a blade, quiet, unflinching, and impossible to dismiss. They weren't merely challenging tradition. They were sending a clear message: privilege and influence, no matter how entrenched, would not be allowed to outweigh legacy and transparency. For King Charles, the demand struck at his core. It wasn't only about Camilla, the woman who had stood by him for decades, but about who was delivering the blow. William, the heir, represents the future. Anne, the dutiful daughter, embodies tradition. United, their voices carried unmistakable weight. The monarchy must always come before personal attachments. The confrontation that followed was tearful and raw, revealing more than just hurt feelings. It exposed a fracture within the royal household, where love, duty, and power collided in the days that followed. Buckingham Palace issued a statement announcing that the restructuring of the royal trust was part of a wider strategy to safeguard the monarchy's integrity. Yet observers noticed something telling: there was no mention of Camilla's children, Laura Lopes and Tom Parker Bowles. In royal language, omission often signals exclusion. The silence marked them as peripheral, outside the long-term vision of the crown. For Camilla, whose reputation had only recently recovered, the implications were devastating. Her children, once quietly welcomed into the fold, were now sidelined, a stark reminder of the monarchy's limits on outside influence. Behind polished words of official protocol, questions multiplied. Was this truly about integrity, or was Charles bowing to pressure from William and Anne? Was he searching for compromise, hiding his pain behind royal procedure? Meanwhile, the outside world erupted. Social media lit up, pundits debated, and headlines framed the move as an effort to protect the legacies of Queen Elizabeth II and Princess Diana to the public. It looked like a calculated step to restore trust, but it also hinted at deeper, private battles shaping the monarchy's future. In the quiet corridors of the palace, alliances shifted, silences grew louder than statements. And one truth became clear: the throne may endure, but its foundations are being rewritten in plain sight. Whispers of the palace shake-up quickly spilled into the streets, igniting a storm of speculation. Social media platforms buzzed with commentary. It's time to clean house. Diana would be proud. To many, these were not just catchy slogans, but the expression of decades of frustration. The monarchy was finally responding to long-standing concerns about privilege and favoritism. Camilla's family, tolerated for years despite their lack of Windsor blood, had been quietly removed from royal trusts. The move was seen not just as financial housekeeping, but as symbolic justice. Public reaction was electric yet deeply rooted. For years, Laura Lopes and Tom Parker Bowles had attended major royal events, sometimes even ahead of blood relatives, a fact that never sat well with traditionalists. To them, the monarchy had bent its own rules, granting privileges to outsiders. Their sudden sidelining was not merely about money or etiquette, but a reminder that legacies matter. The memory of Queen Elizabeth and the legacy of Diana remained untouchable, and the palace appeared intent on reinforcing that principle. Analysts and commentators were quick to note that this support did not appear out of thin air. It had been building for decades, fueled by quiet resentment toward perceived favoritism and the unresolved story of Diana, her memory shaped by compassion. Courage and sacrifice had once again become the moral compass guiding decisions within the palace. Every post and every viral clip carried a subtle suggestion that the monarchy still had the power to honor its values, even if past decisions had tangled its story. Yet within this new wave of approval, there was irony. Charles, so often criticized in the early years of his reign for wavering and indecision, now received rare praise for a step that, in truth, served as a reminder of the very consequences born from his past choices. The sidelining of Camilla's family represented both a restoration and a reckoning. To the public, it felt like vindication for years of unease. But it was also an undeniable reminder that Diana's shadow still stretches across the throne, shaping it more profoundly than any attempt at popularity or acceptance could erase. In this fragile balance of memory, image, and power, the palace accomplished something rare. It transformed a quiet administrative adjustment into a declaration of values. Tradition, legitimacy, and legacy were reinforced, while whispers of scandal, favoritism, and oversight were carefully pushed aside. For now, Charles enjoys a surge of support. The public briefly united in approval, with the memory of Diana once again standing at the center of Britain's imagination, guiding decisions from beyond the gilded gates. But what secrets fuel the fierce divides behind palace walls? Stay with us, for the truth runs deeper. A quiet tension had settled over the palace, invisible to most, yet palpable to those who knew where to look. Prince William, long defined by silence and years of public duty, had grown uneasy watching Camilla's family gain ground. Laura Lopes and Tom Parker Bowles, appearing at royal functions once reserved for direct heirs, no longer felt like courtesy, but intrusion. For William, still burdened by the legacy of his mother, the symbolism was stark. Accepting Camilla as queen consort had been a compromise necessary for stability, but allowing her family to integrate into the monarchy was a line he could not cross. Conflict crept through the palace corridors, subtle but searing. In private, William confronted his father with candor, insisting this was not what Diana would have wanted. Charles, torn between his son and his wife, found himself locked in an impossible balancing act. Protect the crown while navigating the rising tension between loyalty to the past and pragmatism in the present. Staff whispered in corners, some quietly siding with William out of loyalty to Diana, while younger royals leaned toward flexibility and modernization. The divide was more than personal. It was philosophical, even generational. Was the monarchy a sacred tradition, or a living institution that had to evolve to survive? The cracks began to show in small but telling ways. William deliberately avoided Camilla's family events, keeping his distance with quiet restraint. Observers noticed tabloids speculated, and the optics sharpened. The breaking point came when Laura Lopes was photographed touring the Duchy of Cornwall estates, long regarded as the heir's responsibility. To outsiders, it was harmless, a minor visit. To William, it was an unforgivable overstep, a symbolic claim to influence that had no rightful place. Royal guards grew tense, staff murmured, and William acted swiftly. Access was cut off, responsibilities were reassessed, and a quiet resistance to the integration of Camilla's family began to take shape. Even Princess Anne, long seen as neutral, could no longer ignore the stakes. The unspoken question hovered in the air. How far could tradition bend before the monarchy's very spirit fractured? In the halls of St. James's and Clarence House, loyalties were tested and boundaries redrawn. William was no longer simply preparing for succession. He was defending a legacy rooted in honor, duty, and the enduring memory of Diana. This was not merely a family quarrel, it was a defining moment for the monarchy. A quiet storm gathering behind gilded doors, watched by a world eager to read between the lines. And yet, another question lingered. What secret ultimatum was Princess Anne holding? And how might it shake the royal family? Stay connected. The palace had always moved to its own rhythm, a careful choreography of protocol, tradition, and veiled tensions. But beneath the gilded calm, a storm was stirring, and even seasoned courtiers could feel it. Princess Anne, the monarchy's anchor and steady compass, was the first to truly notice. Calm and disciplined, rarely swayed by media storms. She had watched as Camilla's children began moving seamlessly into royal spaces, their access effortless and unchecked. Her instincts told her something was amiss. A private, tense conversation with William, frustrated, disappointed, and feeling sidelined, transformed her quiet watchfulness into decisive resolve. Almost overnight, Anne's behavior shifted. Invitations to Camilla's family gatherings went unanswered. Appearances beside them quietly vanished, politely excused as scheduling conflicts. Insiders, however, understood her message. Royal duties were not to be shared lightly. Tradition was not negotiable. Anne's stance was not born of rivalry. Her concern was bloodline, heritage, the invisible rules that had preserved the monarchy through centuries of wars, scandals, and upheavals. However polite and well-mannered, Camilla's family had crossed a line. Anne decided to confront the matter directly. In a private meeting with King Charles and his senior advisors, her position was made unshakably clear. "You are the king. You are your mother's son," she reportedly told him, her tone measured but resolute. It was not cruelty, it was duty. A reminder that the stability of the crown could never be compromised for personal comfort or favoritism. For the first time, Charles faced a choice that seemed impossible: loyalty to his wife, or the preservation of the monarchy's foundations. Anne's words cut through both personal attachment and political fog, warning that weakening the institution's principles for personal gain would invite judgment from history itself. She was not engaging in palace intrigues. She was safeguarding legacy. The public soon sensed the shift. Headlines speculated and debated. Tabloids celebrated Anne's decisiveness. They declared her the princess who takes a stand, praising her as the true embodiment of Queen Elizabeth II's integrity and disciplined restraint. Meanwhile, scrutiny of Camilla's family grew sharper, their once rising presence now under heavy suspicion. The tide had turned. Behind the palace walls, once hidden friction had erupted into an unspoken ultimatum. Tradition would not bend, and the monarchy's walls seemed to close in. Anne reminded both crown and country that some lines could never be crossed. In her quiet, uncompromising way, she had become both a shield and a signal, showing that duty, blood, and history remained untouchable, even within a house often swayed by sentiment and spectacle. Yet the question lingered. What secrets lay behind the palace plea and this hidden shift? Stay tuned, because shocking revelations were about to surface. A tense hush had settled over Buckingham Palace, the kind of silence that only comes when history is about to tilt. Queen Camilla, usually so composed under the relentless scrutiny of the crown, approached King Charles not with fury, but with fear. She was a mother defending her children, a wife fighting to preserve a fragile legacy. In the quiet of a secluded room, away from cameras and advisors, she spoke softly but urgently, laying bare a truth that few outside the palace corridors could comprehend. Laura and Tom, she explained, had never sought titles or power. All they wanted was a place in the family, recognition, security within the institution. Yet beneath her calm words lay a frail reality. Camilla was wrestling with the old shame of being the second wife, the lingering shadow of judgment, and the terrifying thought that history might dismiss her family as irrelevant. According to sources close to the palace, she broke down, whispering to Charles, "This decision, it will tear us apart." The king, no stranger to scrutiny or loss, felt a different kind of shock, one that struck not at his reputation, but at his heart. Beyond the closed doors, uncertainty rippled through palace corridors. Advisors urged caution, floated ideas of mediation, postponement, or compromise, trying desperately to prevent what they feared could turn into a public storm. But before they could contain it, the unexpected happened: a leak. One carefully timed document shifted the balance of power within the monarchy. Overnight, decisions once private were thrust into the public eye, igniting speculation across social media, tabloids, and the global press. The story quickly became one of loyalty, betrayal, and the unseen tug-of-war at the heart of the crown. Camilla's silence only added fuel to the fire. Her absence from public statements and royal engagements stirred speculation further. Some said she had retreated to her private estate at Ray Mill. Others claimed she had been deliberately sidelined, her influence eclipsed by a rising generation. Meanwhile, William and Kate, calm and resolute, began shaping new initiatives in the wake of her plea, reinforcing what many saw as a subtle but unmistakable shift in the monarchy's direction in the aftermath. Buckingham Palace became a stage for both heartbreak and strategy, where a mother's desperate appeal collided with an invisible power struggle. What began as a personal plea for family recognition revealed itself as a tipping point, a moment where emotion, loyalty, and ambition became entangled, and the royal order quietly began to rewrite itself. The leak, the plea, the absence. Together, they formed a silent revolution, and history watched in suspense. But what other secrets still linger behind the palace gates, waiting to be uncovered? One single document unearthed had sent tremors through the corridors of power. When the draft surfaced from the Duchy of Cornwall archives, speculation turned into revelation. It outlined hidden plans for the future management of royal estates, including centuries-old treasures, and named Laura Lopes as a potential trustee, a role far beyond the casual advisory position anyone might have expected. For many, it was a smoking gun. For insiders, it confirmed suspicions whispered behind closed doors for years. It seemed Camilla had quietly positioned her children at the heart of the monarchy's financial pulse. She had not sought titles or demanded recognition. Instead, she moved with subtle precision, weaving family loyalty into the kingdom's wealth and influence. When Charles confronted the papers, he was reportedly stunned. He had believed there was still a line between personal devotion and royal duty. But these documents revealed that line had blurred. Some saw it as careful planning, others as a dangerous breach of trust. Princess Anne and Prince William, recognizing the urgency, carried the papers straight to Charles's office, leaving no room for delay. The message was clear. The monarchy could not afford to be seen as a private playground for family ambition. History attested these walls with wars, abdications, and scandals. A public trust was always the crown's most fragile foundation. Camilla's silence spoke louder than any statement as the news spread. Social media erupted across the Commonwealth. Hashtags trended, commentary surged, and accusations of nepotism and manipulation filled the feeds. Headlines questioned whether this was true modernization or simply strategic overreach. Some demanded reforms. Others even called for resignations. For the first time in his reign, Charles faced the harsh reality of losing the people's support, the very inheritance he had taken on so. Reluctantly, after Queen Elizabeth's passing, emergency meetings were called. Statements drafted, and advisors argued over the next step. But the momentum was unstoppable. The king now stood at a crossroads. To act against Camilla's influence would mean betraying her trust. Inaction itself threatened the monarchy. Each passing moment reminded him that the crown's destiny depended as much on public perception as on bloodline. Buckingham Palace seemed to hold its breath. In that charged silence, the monarchy's future hung in the balance, shaped by ambition, loyalty, and the unseen influence of a family whose private choices now echoed around the world. But what secrets truly hide behind the locked gates of Clarence House? And why now? Keep watching. Then came the decree. A sudden announcement shook Buckingham Palace, stilling hallways that had long carried the sound of careful politeness. On a day destined to be etched in royal memory, King Charles III issued a statement so decisive that it redrew the lines of influence within the monarchy. Camilla's family, once quietly entangled in royal affairs, was formally stripped of trusts, privileges, and unofficial roles. No more shadow influence, no more access to wealth or decisions. From that moment, the control of royal lands and finances belonged strictly to direct heirs of the House of Windsor. The chapter closed, the gates locked. The tension had been building for months. But on the night before the announcement, a private meeting took place in a modest, camera-free room. Witnesses recall Charles, his hands trembling, handing the signed decree directly to Camilla. He reportedly told her, "The monarchy must survive us both." The words carried the weight of duty and heritage. Yet his eyes revealed heartbreak, the recognition that decades of scandal, seclusion, and scrutiny had led to this irreversible moment. Insiders say Camilla remained composed, rising silently before leaving the room. No protest, no argument, a heavy, suffocating quiet. For the first time, the queen consort became a ghost in her own home, forced to confront the reality that she and her family would remain outsiders forever in the days that followed. Absence spoke louder than words. Laura Lopes and Tom Parker Bowles stayed away from public life, their silence echoing the decision's impact. In interviews and podcasts, subtle hints of conditional loyalty and polite distance suggested a family hurt, yet too dignified to sever ties completely. Their retreat was a stark contrast to the jubilant crowds outside the palace gates, where banners of support for William and Anne waved high. Commentators praised Charles's move as a bold, strategic step to protect the crown, though whispers persisted about the personal cost hidden behind the celebration. Inside Clarence House, Camilla's apartments fell into eerie silence. She remained queen in title, but her trusted circle was gone. The once influential seat had become a gilded prison. She was present but isolated, her power diminished by the very decree meant to safeguard the monarchy. A new contrast emerged: outward unity for the public, and behind closed doors. A fractured world where loyalty, love, and survival collided in silence. This moment, whispered in corridors and splashed across headlines, left lingering questions. Could centuries of tradition withstand such upheaval? Or had a new order quietly claimed its place in the crown? What truly lies behind the quiet fall of a queen consort? And how far does it reach? Stay tuned. The palace gates had always been a stage for pageantry, power, and whispers, but never had silence carried such weight. Once central to royal life, the queen consort began to fade, not with scandal or drama, but through absence. A slow unraveling left courtiers uneasy. Engagements vanished from her calendar. Familiar faces like Laura and Tom no longer walked the corridors. Dinners that once echoed with her laughter grew muted. Even King Charles drifted away, their public appearances rare, their private conversations clipped and cold. Palisades whispered of transformation. Camilla had grown withdrawn, her sharp tones softened, her presence reduced to ceremonial. Speculation grew wild in the tabloids. Was she unwell, miserable, or quietly retreating from the monarchy she had shaped for decades? The public glimpsed fragments, but within the palace, history itself was shifting. The change was not rebellion, not scandal, it was deliberate, precise, and irreversible. Weeks later, a sealed document was added to the Windsor archives, marking the final step in a long-prepared plan. King Charles approved a new trust protocol. Estate management, ceremonial influence, and financial power were now strictly reserved for direct bloodline heirs. Prince William, Prince George, and Princess Charlotte were secured at the center. For Camilla, this meant complete displacement. Her hopes of shared authority dissolved. A personal letter from Charles accompanied the decree unsealed, unadorned, carrying only words of sorrow, misunderstanding, and inevitability. It ended with 7 chilling words: "I had no choice." History required it. The monarchy had been reshaped without public conflict. Prince William's role surged in prominence. Anne returned to duties. Approval ratings climbed as the public embraced a new generation of leaders showing competence and empathy. Camilla and her family withdrew, their foray into royal power sealed forever as a closed chapter. Buckingham Palace's corridors remained hushed. Portraits hung unchanged. Traditions endured, but the subtle shift was undeniable. A queen consort was reduced to a figurehead, while the throne returned to bloodline heirs, securing the dynasty for generations. This was no scandalous downfall, but a quiet realignment, a reminder that in royal politics, absence can carry more weight than presence. And strategy often hides behind inevitability. The crown had been preserved. A mixed dynasty had been set aside. And a new chapter shaped by William, George, and Charlotte began under steady, unyielding hands. So what do you think? Was it William and Anne's pressure that forced Charles to cut ties with Camilla's family? And if so, does this shake the very foundations of the monarchy? Share your thoughts below.